So today's session, I'm just going to let you know, is the beginning of a series of sessions which are all focusing on social action, which, as I'm sure most of you know, is something that's quite big in the Woodcraft folk. What we like to encourage young people to take part in social action and to make our society and our world around us a little bit brighter and a little bit better by taking action on things that we think could be changed. So the aim of this session and this series of sessions, which is going to go on for the next 5 Mondays, is all about social action online and how we can, especially in this time of lockdown, be more aware of what we're talking about online, what we're reading online, and how we're interacting with others online. So a lot of the stuff that we're going to be doing is from what you can see on the screen now, which is the Internet Citizens and Becoming Internet Citizens, which is produced a little bit by Google and YouTube, and we've kind of added in some of our own stuff as well. So just a few kind of things to think about whilst we're in these sessions for this session and all of the others as well. Are just a few things that we can talk about to kind of make the session equal for everybody. So having a look at these words here, having openness, everybody feeling comfortable to share things in these sessions, experiences that they might have had, or things that they've heard about or read online as well. Having a non-judgmental approach, so not judging other people when they want to share things, that's really important. Listening to other people, really important for every kind of discussion and every kind of conversation. Not making assumptions on what other people are saying. Keeping the conversation in the room, so some people might share some personal experiences, and if we then repeat those to other people, not saying so and so from here, but using sort of terms around not saying who said that or who it happened to. The right to pass, which means the right to not answer something if you don't want to. Nobody's going to be forced into anything. Careful of the language that we use, whether that's slang or sort of terms that we see online that we might be talking about, but not necessarily that might be offensive to other people. We don't want to be using language that is offending other people. It's absolutely great to ask questions, and me and Tommaso are here to answer as many questions as we can throughout all of the sessions. And if we can't answer questions, there might be somebody else in the session who can answer the questions, which is really lovely, and we welcome that as well. Also, seeking help and advice from others is always absolutely fine and something that everybody has to do at different points in their lives, and especially in this time, we need lots of help and advice from others. And so at the end, there'll be some information of where we can find further advice. So those are just a few things to think about before we begin. Now I'm already tired from saying all of those things, but we will begin. So the first thing we're going to be doing, our session is all about fake news. So people that are in the chat can write in there, or people on screen can sort of give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down or a nod of your head. Has everybody heard the term fake news before? Most people have, yeah, a few thumbs up. Has anybody never heard of fake news before? Okay, I'm taking that as a no because it doesn't take too long to write no in the chat. So I'm taking that as a no. So fake news, what is it? Is the first question that I'm going to put to everybody. Hopefully my slide is going to change. Perfect. So what do we know about fake news? Let's discuss what we know. Have we heard of it before? Where do we think we find it? And can we think of any examples? So as I said at the beginning, put your hand up if you want to speak and you're on the camera, or write in the chat if you'd like to speak if you're not. Have you heard about it before? Where do we find it? What examples can people think of, if any? Has anybody got anything to share? It says Sapna, but you might not be Sapna. So maybe when you turn on your microphone, you can tell us your name.
Leader, I've heard of fake news by Donald Trump.
You've heard of fake news by Donald Trump or about Donald Trump?
I've heard, like, whenever I hear fake news, people always mention Donald Trump.
I see what you mean. Has anybody else heard fake news being associated with Donald Trump before? A few people, a few nods there. Okay, that's interesting. Can anybody else think of, like, if we've heard about this fake news about Donald Trump or from Donald Trump, where do we see that? Does it just appear on the street in front of us, on the pavement in chalk? Where do we see this with this news? Isabel and Albert, do you want to unmute yourself and tell us?
So often there are like unreliable media sources which might give you fake news. So you can't always trust everything, and often it's spread through social media as well.
Yeah.
Perfect. That is a really good explanation. So we're seeing it in unreliable media sources. I'm going to take that a little bit. What is an unreliable media source? What does that mean? What is a media source? So you mentioned social media. So that's things like Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or any of those kinds of things that we're interacting with other people. There's also the news media, so the newspapers or online newspapers, as well as the real newspapers that we can buy in shops. Anywhere else that we might see this news, real or fake news, where do we find it? Can anybody think of anywhere else? No. Okay. So we've got some. Oh yeah, Isabel and Albert again.
It's often on the telly.
Like sometimes.
Yeah.
On the television, exactly that. The news is kind of all around us, isn't it? Especially at a time like this, where we're in a situation where there's something very new happening to us. I feel like the whole TV schedule is just the news now. So yeah, that is very right. We see lots of things on the television, lots of things on our computers, lots of things on our phones or our iPads or our tablets or anything that we have that we can find out more things. Can anybody think of any more examples of fake news before we move on to the next question? Mabel, have you got one to share?
Sometimes rumors, because
Yeah, rumours between people speaking or between people sending messages. And it's very much like rumours, fake news, because once one person reads that piece of fake news, they might share that to somebody else or send it to their friend. And then that person has also read that fake news. And if they believed it, they might pass it on to somebody else and so on and so on. And it kind of spreads around a bit like a rumour, exactly that. What kinds of things now do we think that might make a news story look fake? How do we know if a news story is real or fake? What kind of things can we look out for? Mabel, is that your hand up for that one?
no idea, Mummy. I did have one, but I forgot it.
That's all right. Oh yeah.
Usually unreliable, like, sources of information. Like there was once this website that said that Christopher Columbus died in 1999.
Right. And you knew that wasn't true?
Yeah, because I knew he died like in the 1400s or 1500s.
Exactly that. So sometimes these unreliable sources, they don't even get their basic facts right. So that's something to look out for. What other kinds of things might we look out for to see whether a news story is real or whether it's fake? What kinds of things might we look out for? Isabel and Albert.
So if other news media are reporting the same story, so if it's just one news media and it sounds like quite a lot of news, like if they were saying like, I don't know, like Boris Johnson died or something, if only one news station is reporting that, you should like check that it's reliable and that a lot of people are saying it.
That is a very good point. Check that other people are talking about it. Especially like you're saying, if it's a very big piece of news, then you would assume that everybody was talking about it. And so if you just find one newspaper talking about it, one online news talking about it, you might then assume that actually either they've got the secret and nobody else knows it yet, or that they aren't telling the truth about what is going on. Yeah. Perfect. So we've had a little think about what fake news is, where we find it, what kind of example. We've had a couple of examples, and also thinking about why we think how we know whether things are fake or real. So we're just going to have a little think now. If everybody can see on the screen where it says we're going to come up with our own definition of fake news. So everybody just take a couple of seconds to think about, if you were going to finish this sentence, fake news is, and we were going to give it a definition, what would we say that it is? Can we put it into one sentence what fake news is? I don't want to hear really fake news is lies, but what it is, but we can think of a little bit more than that. So we can either write it in the chat again, or if you'd like to say what you think your definition is, then I can unmute you. That's absolutely fine. But also have a little think to yourself, even if you don't want to share. Okay, got some little things in the chat here. I had to scroll a little bit. Sorry if I missed some things, but I'm glad that Tommaso was replying to people. That's why I'm glad that he's here to support me. It's always good to have support. So people are saying, Konstantin says, fake news is stories that are made up to trick people, usually for gain to the person who has made the story up. That's a really good point. So usually it's to kind of make people believe things that the writer of that fake news wants other people to believe, and not necessarily what people should be believing. Bella says fake news is news that is made up and spread. Exactly that, like we just said, a bit like a rumor. Nico says news that consists at least partially of lies, although the story with enough truth often tend to spread more. Very interesting. So some stories that are close to the truth but have some lies often spread a bit more. That's interesting. Rafi says news that is not real may be a rumor. Exactly that. And Johan says fake news is just used to scare people or to look good. Mabel says fake news is unreliable sources giving you wrong information. Really good. Isabel, fake news is normally news stories which have been exaggerated or invented to gain emotional reaction. Really good. I think that one's really important, because I think sometimes it can be based on a true story and then very much exaggerated into something that isn't so true to kind of help spread those rumors that we were talking about before. Fake news is false news people spread in order to gain people's attention or get their opinion across. Fake news is made up to make other news sources popular. All of these definitions are really good. Fake news is something that you have heard and is fake. That's the basic definition, exactly that. If I come back to my PowerPoint, the definition that we've been given here is that fake news refers to articles or posts, and a post is something that's put onto somewhere like Instagram, that appear to be factual but which contain intentional lies pretending to be facts, which are intended to influence people, attract viewers or deceive them. And I think our definitions that we came up with in the chat are very much similar to this definition here. It's just brought them all together. Do people agree with this definition that's on the screen or disagree? We can have thumbs up, thumbs down, somewhere in the middle. I'll put it in the chat. Isabel, somewhere in the middle, although I think that might not be Isabel. I can't see whose thumb that is. Do you want to tell us why you're in the middle? Or you just in the middle? That's fine. Don't have to share if you don't want to. Anybody else? Dominic agrees. Few other people agree with the definition, so that's good. We're on track with agreeing, so that's fine. So now we're going to have a little look at an activity about the headlines, but I'm just going to, before I share with you some headlines that we can decide whether they're real or not real, I'm just going to share with you a few other things, a range of other things that could indicate that a news story is fake. So some of those things we talked about before, are they from a reliable source that we trust? have we seen other people talking about this? I'm going to give us a few more tips for when we get to our guessing game, which is coming next, of how we might look at whether they are real or fake. So somebody said a suspicious URL. Has anybody heard of a URL before? Some people, yeah. So if we're online in the top bar where it says the website that we're looking at, sometimes if they end in things like .biz, then that sometimes means that it's not necessarily a very reliable source, because lots of people can make those kinds of websites. So I could make one now that said Lauren Carstad is the best .biz, and everybody would then believe that that was true news. I mean, some people might believe that's true news, but not everybody would. So it's all all of that kind of looking at the website that we're going to, as well as at the headline. As somebody already said, highly emotional or exaggerated language, so something that sounds pretty untrue might turn out to actually be untrue, and some things might actually sometimes scarily be true. But again, looking at other people talking about it as well. Having a less well-known company name and logo. So that's, again, going back to our reliable and unreliable sources. If it's coming from a logo and a name of a company or a news media that we know and that we trust, we are going to trust it obviously a little bit more. Sometimes, however, fake news makers might blur out an image or change the name slightly of our well-known and well-trusted news medias, so they might just have a slightly different name, and not be what we thought we were clicking on, because they're slightly different, but not everybody would have noticed it. Also links to other unlikely sounding stories. So sometimes when we're looking at news online, especially, it might say, if you liked this story, a bit like on YouTube, if you watch a video, if you liked this, you might like this as well. And sometimes if those other stories sound a bit unlikely and a bit unreal, then often that's a good way to look as well. Also looking for sort of spelling errors, excuse me, and punctuation errors, often a way where people have been sort of rushing through to create lots of fake news stories. And after we've played this next activity, we'll talk about what we can do when we see something that we think is fake online. So I'm going to show you a news story now, which is from World News Matters. It's breaking news, and the headline is, "What conspiracy? Reptilian people walk the earth. Here's the proof." So what do people think? Do we think this is real? Do we think this is not real? People have got their thumbs down. I'm just going through the chat now, and I can see that Dominic said before, always use Google because it's the most well-known company on the earth, on the web. It's very true, but there's lots of things on Google that are also fake, but it's good to, as Johan says, the secured and unsecured logo next to the address bar, which we can see on here, is not secured, which means it's already a not such a good website. Lots of people are saying fake. It's definitely fake. Big fake, 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 fake. Nothing on Wikipedia about return. That's always a good place to look first as well. Definitely fakes. There's no proof there. The other stories look unrealistic. Exactly that. So we've used something that we just talked about, links to other unlikely sounding stories. Do we really think that? Let's have a look at one of them. The ice age is coming. Extreme snowstorms hurtle towards the UK. Has anybody seen any snowstorms today, recently? No. Oh, that has been quite windy today, but I haven't seen any snow. So that one is quite unlikely. So also, if I show you all the actual web bar, what do we think now that we've seen the website as well? Is that a whole nother shout out to us about anything? Do we think that makes it look more fake? I would agree. It's not a trustworthy source, and there's a mistake in world. There we go, exactly that. So they've even spelt their own website wrong of what they were trying to create. Okay, Next one's the second one. So everybody get your fake news hunting brains in action. They don't even have world spelled properly, so they might not own the actual URL. That's exactly true. But if you just looked at a glance, you might think that it said world without actually reading it properly if you're just loading it from your phone or from social media. Okay, next one is the Daily Global News. Airline hires canine crew members. What do people think about this? Has anybody been on a plane ever where they've had a canine crew member? News is with a Z, exactly that. It's a spelling error right there on their own name. Toby, do you think it's real? Do you think it's fake? You think it's real? Right, nice. Have you been on a plane with a airline host as a canine animal? No, not yet. Maybe one day. Maybe one day. What other things are we seeing here that might tell us whether it's true or whether it's not true? It's news, not news. Yeah, exactly that. There are police dogs sometimes on a plane. Yeah, exactly that. Fake, same website, same news story as the other one. Exactly that. The article's on the side. Why would celebrities overthrow the government? I don't know. I don't know. And let's have a look at the URL there. They have the exact same news stories, exactly that, from our other fake news page. So again, it's .org.com. And again, they've spelt news wrong as they have done in their actual thing. Some people, when they want people to take notice of a sign, they use police colours and write polite notice, so they think it's police notice. Yeah, exactly that kind of thing, to get people's attention, to make them think that they've seen something else. Exactly that. The background doesn't look like a plane. No, exactly. He looks like the dog looks like they're sitting to have an interview for The Apprentice rather than that they're going to be an airline crew. Exactly that. I agree. Okay, perfect. And then, why don't they just create a link? Not sure what you mean, Konstantin. Do you want to unmute yourself and ask? No. Feel free to read it there. Okay, fake news, never seen a canine. No, exactly that. Okay, so this one also, well done, was fake for all those people who got that right. And then our last one here. Hopefully we can see this. I can maybe zoom in a little bit. Can people see that, or is it a bit small? I can maybe make it a bit bigger. Let's try that. What do we think of this one? Thumbs up for true, beat down for fake. Some people are saying the BBC is a good sign, a good-ish sign, okay. Some people are saying it's true. What kind of things are making us think that it's true? Probably true. I heard petrol is really cheap now, yeah. So somebody's already heard it from somewhere else, so that's also a good idea. Some people are saying this is crazy. I've not heard of petrol being under £1 for a long time. So yeah, it might not be true. It might be a mock company. Cars aren't being used as much right now. Exactly that. It is my screenshot, but I could have screenshotted a real or a fake news story. We do find them out there. People saying true. They have real news stories on the side. Exactly that. Things that we've heard about before. Things that are going on right now. They make it look realistic, and you heard it on BBC Breakfast, so you heard it from another source. Perfect. And now you're seeing it again, so you're more likely to think that it's real. Technically could have loaded up a fake version of the site and pasted a BBC URL. Could have done. The picture looks convincing. Can we also see at the bottom of the picture there's a bit of a caption and where the image is from as well, whereas in the other ones we didn't see any of that sort of thing either. We can see the URL in this one and see that it's from bbc.co.uk. It's got the secure lock symbol that somebody mentioned that wasn't in the others. So do we think it's real? Do we think it's fake? And yeah, it's cheaper to just have a bike. Do we think it's real? Do we think it's fake? Real, fake, real. Real. Some people saying real. Most people saying real. Perfect. That one was real. So we've had a little look. Had a little look at what kind of things make us think that things are real or fake. And now every time we look at a news story online, hopefully we've got a few ideas of what kinds of things to look out for to determine whether it's real or fake. Why we kind of talked a little bit about why people spread fake news and why people make fake news. Does anybody have anything else to add about why people might make fake news, or what people's intentions might be about what people might get out of making fake news? To get famous, yeah, ad revenue, exactly that. Definitely. So getting some money from having adverts on your news channel, even though everything you're putting up there is fake, people are still seeing the adverts that are on there. Anything else that people can think of? Money, yeah. They might make fake news to fearmonger or spread panic in general, exactly that, especially at a time that we're going through right now. We're definitely going through a time where there's probably quite a lot of fake news going on. And as Toby said, then they can control people's belief. They can tell people what they want them to believe. People get money for it, exactly that. People get satisfaction, that's interesting. Product placement, yeah, definitely. Some people aren't sure. Stanley says, I don't think the not secure mark means anything. I see it on Google's official site all the time. We'll see. I think that usually if the secure site is there, that's a good sign that something is true, but I understand it might not be everywhere. Dominic says, for fun, to be mean, says Mabel. People saying for fun and also for fishing as well. So yeah, exactly that. People create fake news for so many reasons. For example, financial incentives with the hope that they could be earning advertising revenue, as somebody said. Often sensationalist stories generate lots of revenue and people click on them a lot because they think, as somebody said, oh my goodness, this really massive thing has happened. Somebody famous has died. Somebody's had a baby. Somebody's done this. And so they click on it. And then often people get lots of money from people clicking on the advertised link. Another reason is for political goals, so a desire to influence opinion for or against a group, party, or political candidate. So sometimes if there's an election coming up or if there's a certain type of event coming up, there might be a lot of fake news around that event to sway people's idea, as Toby said, to control people's belief of what they believe, and also to provoke people, exactly that. Sometimes for personal reasons, as somebody said, as I think somebody said in the chat as well. So just a desire to spread mischief or to promote a personal agenda. So again, if I was to make my website of Lauren Carstad is the best, if people could then create another website that Lauren Carstad is the worst, and that's just their personal belief and that's what they want to spread. I'd love for people to share with us what they might do if they saw a fake news story online. Would we do anything if we saw one online? Would we just scroll past it? Somebody says tell an adult, and somebody seems to be posting some YouTube links, which I'm not sure what they are. So definitely tell an adult is a good idea. Ignore it or look into it. Report it to the website. It's a very good idea. Does everybody know how they would report something on a website, or report a website if they didn't think that it was legitimate and spreading good information? Mabel?
I would probably like write a letter to like the police or something saying that this is not reliable and you should do something?
Yeah, you can definitely contact. There's some cyber agencies in the police that you can contact and tell about fake websites. Definitely, that's a good idea. Or to write a letter explaining that. People are saying don't visit the website because otherwise they encourage the fake news. Exactly that. They would report it. Ignore it or look into it. Report the website. So yeah, clear it and block the site. Some people say not do anything and get on with our lives. What do people think would be a sort of bad thing to do with the fake news if we found fake news? Don't share it. Exactly that. So if we find a piece of fake news, even if we don't report it to anybody because we don't know how to or we don't know where we would report it, we could still not. We could still do our bit by not sharing it. I wouldn't necessarily call 999 because it's not necessarily an emergency unless it was a very bad fake news story about something hateful that was going to put somebody in danger. Also, yeah, don't click on the related links and don't try and read the other stories. Really, really good stuff. So what you can do if you see it on social media and you see that people are sharing things on social media on things like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and TikTok, you can always report the people who are sharing it and report the stories that are going out if they're fake. Or if you believe them to be fake. You can also ignore the story, as somebody said, and just remove it from your newsfeed and not look at it. And you can also, as some other people said, report it to the site or let somebody else know. If you know who the provider of the site is, you could let them know as well. You could also comment on the story if you found it on a sort of social media or some other medias allow comments in order to alert other people who are reading the story that it is fake, and also share a link to the real news story if it's something that has been sort of exaggerated from a real story. If you tell them to stop, they won't. You could try, but you could try and tell them to stop, but you could also report it to the provider or to the person who runs the website. So that brings us nicely to our final part of the discussion. So let's think back to what we talked about at the beginning of the discussion of what we thought fake news was, how we looked out for it, where we found it and what examples we could think of. Do we know anything new about fake news that we didn't before? Have any of our ideas changed on fake news now that we've had a bit of a discussion about them? And how would you respond now if you came across fake news? And why is it important to question the information that we see online? So have a think about those questions. Yes, exactly that, Mabel. I would call 999 in that situation as well. Yeah, I agree that more news sites should have comments, but I understand why. But I think on some news sites you can contact them, or you could also take that information and write somebody else to report them as well. Does anybody have any answers to share about the questions that are on the screen now? What kinds of things do we think differently about any kind of fake news? Have we learned any different ways of determining whether something is real or something is fake? And how would we respond if we came across fake news? Would anybody like to share anything? Or would anybody like to share looking at the URL, says Mabel? That's very good. I'm glad somebody has learned a new technique. Has anybody got anything else they'd like to share with us about fake news? probably about the same way, but it's got me to think about it more, which will probably when I next encounter some. Exactly that. So it's good to be thinking about it. Mabel said thinking about reporting it immediately. Dominic says look at more trusted websites, see if it's real. So have a different look around. Sometimes even with real news, it's good to read it from a different perspective every time, to kind of see what people are thinking. I learned that the website URL tells you how secure the website is. Yeah, exactly that. Exactly that. Felix and Tom in Hackney said, have you talked about the use of fake news as a way of deflecting media pressure? Would you like to say anything more about that, Felix and Tom? If you want to unmute your microphone, you can.
Hi.
Hello, Tom.
Nice to see you all. Sorry, Felix actually isn't here, and we're slightly cooking while this is going on, but we're really enjoying it. I wasn't sure if you, touched on it. People at the beginning were talking about fake news and Donald Trump, and I was wondering if people knew, had an understanding of how Donald Trump used fake news in a slightly different way from the way we've been talking about today.
We haven't touched on it too much, but if you would like to share with us a little bit, that would be lovely.
Donald Trump, amongst others, and I think Donald Trump was one of the first people to do this, and I don't want to be too partisan. Other people have done the same thing, but there's the way the term fake news first started to come about was the use of people who were being attacked in the media, and maybe stories coming out about things that they might or might not have done. And rather than addressing those things and answering the questions, they dismissed them with the phrase, "Oh, this is fake news." So it can be a two-edged sword in that it's a good description of things that are fake, but also it can be used. You can use that accusation as a way of avoiding scrutiny, which is certainly something that is a new phenomenon that's come about recently from some of our world leaders.
That's a very interesting point, Tom, and I think it's also about kind of, as you say, using that as an excuse. But some people, now that we've kind of talked about these things, might say, how can you be claiming this is fake news when we can see that it's from a reliable source? We can see that the pictures are real. We can see that we've seen it everywhere else. So exactly that. It's about picking up on what people are saying and then analysing it within ourselves and thinking about it in a wider picture of whether we think that it's real or fake. Exactly that. Thanks so much for sharing that.
More succinctly than me, Lauren. Well done.
Thanks so much. So some people are saying in the chat, whilst Tom was talking, that fake news helped Donald Trump and Brexit. Yep, some people think that, and some people have proved that. But then, as somebody said, that's some of that could be fake news in itself. I think that it's so hard to know in this world what is fake news, what isn't fake news. I just hope that some of the things that we've been talking about kind of help us determine at least what real people want us to think, and not what the sort of online lies and rumors want us to think. Okay, cool. More sites, yeah. Just read the news that we trust. Okay, so I think lots of people have picked up on some things, even if we haven't necessarily learned anything brand new in this session. I think people have sort of reminded people of what we need to look out for when we're looking at the news and when we're finding other things. As I mentioned at the beginning, there's lots of support out there if people are worried about something that they read online, or if they kind of find something that they think needs to be reported. There's some other places that you can have a look at here as well. Next week, our session is going to be slightly focusing still on fake news. Tommaso, do you want to give us a little bit of a rundown about what next week is, if you can, or just tell us the name of it if you can't? Are you still here?
So yeah, the next session is called Spot the Bias, and it's linked to this session in the sense that we will see how different news sites and websites might present news in different ways, and how that might influence the way we think and perceive what happens in the world, basically.
Perfect. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
So same time next week, but there's a different link. I see. Interesting. I'll have a look into that, Tom. If everybody wants to join us next week, that would be absolutely fantastic. If they go to the web link that I just put into the chat for our new website, dreambigathome.uk/live, that would be really great. Thank you all for joining. If anybody has anything else to share with us, then feel free to get in touch with us on social media or via email as well, and let us know how you're doing, and any other fake news that you find, let us know. But thanks so much for joining, and hopefully see you all next week.
Bye.
Bye.